Welcome. Nigeria's 1999 constitution has always been a topic of controversy. The most recent is the move by the Nigerian Senate to review the constitution yet again. There are those who say the constitution is now obsolete. We will be having a conversation with a retired lawyer and a writer who is very vocal and passionate about issues affecting the country. I'm talking about Dele Farotimi. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
The conversation is very hot at the moment, and you are in the forefront of saying that there must be an end to this. We don't actually have a constitution. That's what you say. As a lawyer,
Yes.
You know, retired or not, you are still a lawyer. And you know that there is no perfect document that can be created, especially when you're talking about a constitution. There will obviously over time be amendments that will be needed. So
You see,
don't you think that an amendment would address the issues you're talking about?
here's the thing. If something is incurably bad, it is simply incurably bad. You can amend the expressed will of the people that has become necessary to amend for a function of a fraction of time. Maybe societal trends have changed. There is a need to do some social engineering. At least when the Nigerian people expressing their will brought out the 1960 Independence Constitution supervised by the British colonial powers, they were expressing a will. The British left. The same people, in expression of their sovereign will, had a plebiscite. In fact, there are a series of plebiscites by which Northern Cameroon elected to join Cameroon, and by which the Midwest region was created. The Nigerian people, without the supervision of the colonial powers, expressed their sovereign will. The 1960 Independence Constitution was amended within 3 years of independence, and a further region was created. They used their God-given brain to deal with the exigencies of the time. The Midwest region was created, and that was the expression of the people's will. The Nigerian state was hijacked in 1966. The 1979 Constitution, upon which the 1999 Constitution is itself based, is a fraud. The Constituent Assembly of 1977 submitted a completely different constitution to the Obasanjo-led government. They willfully introduced several strange clauses into what was handed to them. Several of those, I'll point out one. The Land Use Act. It was never part of what was discussed at the Constituent Assembly. Obasanjo smuggled it into what became the 1979 Constitution. That is one. The second thing you need to come to grip with, the fact that today in Nigeria, each of the states that have been created since 1967 have been the creation by military fiat by men who were not representative of Nigerians. We moved from 4 regions in 1966. Today we are 36 states. Where did states come from? We now have the incongruity of a federal government that is creating states. We have the incongruity of a situation where our revenue allocation formula is based on local governments that are created centrally. We have the incongruity of a situation where, look at Lagos State for instance, they said they were creating LCDAs. The popular story was that it was because they were in opposition. Today, Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the father of the APC, one of its creators. The LCDAs in Lagos remain LCDAs. Whether the population of Lagos is going to burst at the seam, it makes no difference, because in this funny federation that we practice, it is the central that creates local government, And we all know exactly what has happened.
All right, not a lot of persons will get the point that you've just made. I do get it, but I just want you to, in simple terms, would you go with that constitution and amend?
My people, the Yorubas, they have a proverb. They say, "Tiwaju ba se lo, eyin a se pada si." If you do not know where you're going, you must surely know where you're coming from. The reality of the Nigerian experience is that for us to move forward, we actually have to go back. Going back means a recognition of the core principles that founded Nigeria. Those core principles were last enshrined in a document in 1963. What are those core principles? Regions that are capable of developing at their people's pace. Second, federalism. Without an agreement on a federal structure, Nigeria would never have become. Ahmadu Bello would never have become part of the Nigerian state if it wasn't based on federalism. Obafemi Awolowo would never have accepted to become part of the Nigerian Federation because the Yorubas would never have agreed to become part of a unitary system. Nigeria is today functionally a unitary dictatorship. The only way you can resolve the crisis that we have today, if you are truly interested in a resolution, is to come to terms with the fact that the 1999 Constitution is a fraud.
Okay.
You have to go back to the 1963 Constitution. At best, you take the recommendations of the different talk shops that have evolved over the years. The ones organized by Obasanjo before he scuttled it with his third-term ambition, the one organized by Jonathan himself, even if you go as far back as the Abacha Conference, the general consensus amongst Nigerians is that we should go back to strong federations. It was further that there should be 6 regions. Those 6 regions are already recognized variously by all the different political players within Nigeria itself. So go back to the 1963 Constitution, tweak it, and then present it to the people
to decide
whether they want it or not. Okay. But to have a situation where a Lawan will sit down in Abuja, Baja will sit down alongside him, and people will presume that beneficiaries of a fraud that has assured that the Nigerian people serves those who are meant to serve them. The people cannot feed, but the people who purport to represent them have become obese.
We'll come back to the role to be played by the National Assembly. But before we continue with the conversation on the Constitution, there is another pressing issue that seemed to be on the same sphere with the conversation around the Constitution. That's the conversation around restructuring. So my question would be, what should take precedence and which should the Nigerian people be backing?
Every time you hear a person speak about the Constitution, talking to you about how there is a need to tweak it, do away with it, they are talking about structure. That we have 36 states in Nigeria is a constitutional imperative. That there are 36 states in Nigeria today is a function of the fact that it is written into our Constitution. If we are going to ever change that structure, because that's the structure of the states, the way we organize our judiciary, the way we organize the police, the way we structure our local government, all the things to do with governance, they are constitutional issues. There is nothing about the Constitution beyond what it prescribes as the structure of governance. Let me show you clearly how these are practical everyday issues. Under the 1963 Constitution, there was a derivation formula that assures that the regions were able to keep what they made, a large portion of it, and only a bit went to the federal purse. In Nigeria of today, everything goes to the federal purse, and then the federal purse distributes. So you have states that are not even capable of surviving on their own without federal subvention. So when we use the word federal in relation to Nigeria, let us be clear, there is actually a unitary system. In fact, to even call it a unitary system abuses those who actually have a proper unitary system. The British have a unitary system, but power is devolved.
Okay, let's move a little away from that and go back to the conversation around the Senate's role, the National Assembly's role in the entire process. What really is the role of the National Assembly in this instance? Because there's been some fogginess around whether the Senate or the House of Representatives really have any say in the making of a constitution.
I will say this to you straight up. I do not believe for 1 second that legalese or any legalistic argument will resolve our problems. You do not rule a people by force. To expect the National Assembly, as currently constituted, to resolve the crisis of nationhood faced by Nigerians would be to wait for Godot, perhaps. Here is the thing that we must all wrap our minds around. I posted a picture on Twitter yesterday. It would help to explain this a little. The picture showed Boris Johnson, I think he was still the mayor then, riding a bicycle. And the next picture showed our speaker, Mr. Gbajabiamila, alighting from one of our presidential jets, and waiting for him was a limousine. I didn't post it to show persons. It was to show the objective realities of the different societies. In one society, instinctively the leaders or rulers, if I may, expect to be served. They expect to be elevated. In the other, the leaders expect to serve, and they are careful to project an image of service, of humility. Now, how do we expect that beneficiaries of a crime, and every member of the Nigerian legislative arm, every member of the Nigerian governing class are beneficiaries of a crime against the Nigerian people? They benefit from a document that pretends to flow from the people, but which empowers them and turns them into more or less feudal lords. Today, what you find is that the people in the ruling class, if you really close your eyes and you use your imagination, the governor could be an emir. He is removed from the afflictions of his people because he is not dependent on them for the retention of his powers. So the government and those in power do not see anything to gain in letting the people have the power to make the decisions. So decisions must always be made for the people by proxy. So you find that as long as you continue to create emirs in place of governors, you continue to, because, okay, let me give you an example. The Igbo man will say, I want Biafra. The Yoruba man will say, oh, I want to Odua Republic, and that will solve my problem. What they all conveniently ignore is the fact that since 1999, their governors have not been Fulani. But the governors might as well have been Fulani, because the feudal system that was brought into the Nigerian governance system after the second coup, which began to reflect the structuring of the Nigerian state thereafter, because that was when power became centralized in Nigeria and the president of Nigeria became functionally the sultan. Because what he does is that he tells the state governors, who are essentially emirs, what to do. And they do it. And if they don't do it, the sultan inside Aso Rock could do and undo. And that is why a Lawan will come out and say what he said about what the southern governors had done. Because he understands that functionally, they should take their cue from the top. And we really, really believe that this lot will sit down and write a way
Okay, let's look
Their
at an
gangsters
ideal.
paradise.
Let's look at an ideal scenario
Our
in
ide-
Nigeria.
our
Sorry, I
situation is
know.
not ideal.
Yes, but we need to push for a way forward.
Yes,
so
we
my
should.
question would be: in an ideal scenario,
Yeah.
what would be the role of the National Assembly in getting us started in to formulate a new constitution?
See, our situation is far from ideal. One of the hallmark of the 1963 Constitution are the sections related to referendums and plebiscites. Those are the clauses that allowed Nigerians to express their will. If the National Assembly would do something nationalistic for the first time in its entire existence since 1999, it could simply introduce a bill taking us back to where we were, probably with minor amendments to account for the objective realities on the ground today, and then present it to the Nigerian people by simple vote.
Okay.
It could do that, but anything that it presumes to do to amend the fraud undergirding it, it barely kicks the ball down the line, and I don't know how
I
far
think
down
you've
the
made
line.
your point on that. But let's talk about if they do that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the social contract part of things, the citizen-led process to creating a new constitution. And is that something you envisage that will really be possible, considering how polarized this country currently is?
Nigeria is not pluralized. We are not polarized at all. Don't buy into that elitist illusion. The average Nigerian has no problem with his neighbor, be that neighbor Fulani, Igbo, as long as the other person recognizes the validity of the other person's rights.
But some people will disagree with you because
Yes,
as it
they
stands,
will.
we have kidnapping, we have Boko
Yes,
Haram,
but
we have headsmen
I
issues,
agree.
so many issues.
All those issues are there, but all those issues are facilitated by a failing state. And that state is failing because the people do not consider themselves served by that state. How did Boko Haram begin? Can we tell ourselves some truth? How did it begin? It arose out of the excesses of the state. Look at what is happening in Kaduna. We are seeing in broad daylight state-sponsored thugs attacking peaceful protesters, labor unions. This is how criminality sponsored by the state always spin out of control and become problems for which we all now suffer. And then they blame it as if it were the citizens themselves who have managed to hate themselves enough. Look, okay, so they will talk about Fulani headsmen. The people of Kankara, are they Igbo? They're not Yorubas. Those are mostly Fulanis in Kankara. The entire northwestern part of Nigeria, is it Igbo people living there or Yoruba people? They are the natives. Why has it degenerated thus? Because the state became complicit. Why has Boko Haram become unresolvable? It's simple. It's become big money for some people. We're not polarized. What is happening is that the elites are giving us different reasons why we should hate ourselves.
Okay.
Because when we embrace those, we do not focus on the commonalities of our afflictions. The same people we in the South would call unidentified Fulani headsmen, they are the same unidentified Fulani headsmen in Kankara. So it is not a Fulani problem, it's a security problem. But those who have failed to provide security would prefer to talk about it as though it were to be an ethnic issue. When you deal with it from its ethnicity focus, you lose sight of the fact that it is actually the breakdown and implosion of a failing state.
How do you envisage a citizen-led process to getting a new constitution? How would that look like?
Look, Nigerians have two choices again when it comes to how to get there. We can do it the easy way, which would mean that the beneficiaries of the heist would decide that, look, what we've stolen is too big. We can't get away with this. They can negotiate their exit. That is easy. The second way, it could very well be that the Nigerian people get tired of this mess and speaking with one voice, rise up to demand the exit of the current system and the government underpinning it, and simply demand in some form or the other the simple question of their nationality. What do we do? Where do we go from here? A second one, which I've heard others talk about and which is sounding more and more attractive because of the fact that it might present perhaps a less volatile way out of this, is that perhaps a revolutionary party emerges in Nigeria, or we all coalesce into an existing one. There is the Yele Sowore party. There is the one being raised by Femi Kuti as well. The progressives might decide to coalesce together and get into one of those parties, present a charter to the Nigerian people, making it very clear that should that party win power, this is the constitution that it will place before the National Assembly within the first, maybe an agreed time frame. But that party would then at that point have to be a national party that is contesting every electoral seat available in the country. Let us tell ourselves something. Since 1999 till date, we have not had more than maybe 25 million people voting in a country of over 200 million people. It is because the people are disconnected from the system. Aside from the inefficiencies and corruption of the electoral processes itself, the impotence of the electoral mass, as evidenced by the continual thwarting of their will by the kind of people who have emerged through the system, has simply meant that the people have become disconnected, disillusioned, and they've simply walked away from the process. They don't expect anything to change. So we need to bring them back. So only a party or a movement that is showing them that, okay, at the end of this process, there is a clear commitment to a move from the precipice, that might perhaps move the night. There are several discussions going on within the progressive movement. But one thing that is clear is that you cannot build on a defective foundation. We're sat in a building that is probably about 10 floors in height. Here is the thing. If you had designed the foundation to carry a bungalow, there is no way this building will sit on top of that foundation. But if you are planning on building a multi-level structure, based on your design, then you have the structural engineers design you the foundation that will carry the structure. Reality today is that the foundation of the Nigerian state have been designed by thieves, crooks, murderers.
I think I will go with the positive comments you've made during the course of this conversation. You've given us options to explore. Yeah, so it is left to the citizenry to make a choice as to which direction they truly want to go.
Amen to that.
It's always a pleasure to have you in the studio. Thank you very much for joining us.
The pleasure is all mine. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. That's our conversation today. I hope it pricked you some way or the other. More conversations like this here on New Central Television. My name is Felicity Ezewike.